Blackwood Cemetery was an ancient burial ground, shrouded in whispers of unholy events. Located at the edge of a quiet, forgotten town, it was avoided by the locals, who spoke of unexplainable phenomena and ghostly apparitions. One fateful night, a group of 4 friends, Jake, Emily, Sam, and Lisa, decided to explore the cemetery, hoping to debunk the supernatural rumors. What began as an innocent thrill-seeking adventure spiraled into a horrifying nightmare they would never forget. The Dare. It started with Jake, the skeptic of the group, mocking the stories. Ghosts? Really? It's just an old graveyard. He laughed, his voice echoing through the dimly lit streets. To prove his point, he challenged the group to spend an hour inside Blackwood Cemetery at midnight. Emily hesitated, sensing an unspoken dread, but Sam and Lisa, eager for excitement, agreed. The arrival. As the clock struck 12, the group arrived at the cemetery gates. A chilling wind howled through the trees, and the full moon cast eerie shadows over the moss-covered tombstones. The gate creaked open with an unnatural sound, almost like a warning. Emily noticed carvings on the gate, symbols she couldn't recognize. Her unease deepened. The encounter. Walking deeper into the cemetery, the group stumbled upon a neglected mausoleum. Its stone door bore the name Eleanor Blackwood. Lisa, curious and defiant, pushed it open despite Emily's protests. Inside they found an old diary, its pages filled with cryptic writings about summoning rituals and curses. As Lisa read aloud from the diary, the air grew colder. A low, guttural growl emerged from the shadows. The group froze. From the corner of their eyes, they saw a translucent figure of a woman in a torn black dress. Her eyes glowed red, and her face twisted in rage. The chase panic set in as the ghostly figure floated toward them. The group ran, but the cemetery seemed to transform into a labyrinth. The graves appeared to shift, blocking their escape routes. Whispers echoed in the air, voices calling their names in haunting tones. Sam tripped over a loose root and screamed as skeletal hands emerged from the ground, grasping at his legs. Jake and Emily pulled him free, but the spectral woman was closing in. The revelation. Desperate, Emily remembered the carvings on the gate and realized they were protection symbols. She tore a page from the diary that resembled the symbols and started drawing them on the ground with a piece of chalk she had in her bag. The ghost shrieked, momentarily halted by the markings. The group stumbled toward the gate, but Lisa hesitated, entranced by the ghost. "She's calling me," Lisa whispered, her eyes glazing over. Despite their efforts to drag her away, Lisa walked back toward the mausoleum, disappearing into the darkness. Jake, Emily, and Sam barely escaped as the cemetery gates slammed shut behind them. Lisa was never found, and the townspeople spoke of seeing a new ghostly figure in the cemetery, a young woman with hollow eyes, wandering among the tombstones. Haunted by the events of that night, the survivors vowed never to speak of what they had seen. But deep down, they knew the cemetery wasn't just a resting place for the dead. It was a portal to something far worse. Blackwood Cemetery remains sealed to this day, its dark secrets buried beneath layers of fear and superstition. Those brave enough to approach it claim to hear whispers and see shadowy figures. Some say the spirit of Eleanor Blackwood is still searching for vengeance, while others believe Lasa's soul is forever trapped. A warning to all who dare disturb the dead. Would you risk entering Blackwood Cemetery? Weeks after the horrifying events at Blackwood Cemetery, Jake, Emily, and Sam were still grappling with the trauma. They barely slept, haunted by recurring nightmares of skeletal hands and glowing red eyes. Lisa's disappearance weighed heavily on them, especially as rumors of a new ghost wandering the cemetery began to spread. But the story wasn't over. Something was calling them back. The omen. It started with Emily. She awoke one night to find a note on her bedside table, written in Lassa's handwriting, "Help me, come back." The air in her room turned icy cold as she heard faint whispers repeating her name. Frightened but determined, Emily shared the note with Jake and Sam. Jake dismissed it as a cruel prank, but Sam noticed something chilling. An identical note had appeared in his backpack that morning. The notes were smeared with dirt and smelled faintly of decay. They all knew what it meant. Lisa was reaching out to them. The decision reluctantly, the trio decided to return to the cemetery. This time they armed themselves with flashlights, protective charms from a local psychic, and a tattered old book on banishing spirits Emily had found in her grandmother's attic. As they stood at the cemetery gates once more, an oppressive silence blanketed the area. The carvings on the gate seemed to glow faintly, and the air felt thick, as if the cemetery itself was alive. Deeper into the darkness, the group retraced their steps to the mausoleum. The path seemed different, more overgrown and twisted, as if the cemetery had rearranged itself. When they reached the mausoleum, they found the door ajar. Inside, the diary was gone, and in its place was a small, blood-stained handkerchief with Lisa's initials embroidered on it. As they stared at the handkerchief, a deafening screech filled the air. The ghost of Eleanor Blackwood appeared, her form more menacing than before. Her torn black dress flowed unnaturally, and her eyes blazed like fire. The bargain, Eleanor spoke, her voice echoing with pain and anger. "You dared disturb my slumber. One of you remains with me, and yet you return. Foolish children." Emily mustered her courage and stepped forward, clutching the protective charm tightly. "Lisa didn't deserve this. Please let her go." Eleanor let out a bone-chilling laugh. "She belongs to me now. Her soul sustains this cursed ground. But if you wish to take her place, perhaps I can bargain." The group froze, horrified by the offer. Jake shook his head violently. "No way. There has to be another way." The ritual desperate, Emily opened the banishment book. It contained a ritual to sever the ties between a spirit and the physical world. The instructions required them to find the source of Eleanor's power, her original grave, and burn an item tied to her past. With Eleanor's ghostly form looming ever closer, the group fled deeper into the cemetery. The whispers grew louder, and shadowy figures began to rise from the graves. Sam spotted an old headstone marked Eleanor Blackwood, 1789 to 1823. Beneath the headstone, they unearthed a box containing a locket. Inside was a faded portrait of a young Eleanor with a man and a child. The final confrontation. As Emily prepared to burn the locket, Eleanor's ghost shrieked in fury and charged at them. Jake and Sam tried to hold her back, using their charms to form a protective barrier. The ground beneath them trembled, and skeletal hands began to emerge once again. Emily lit a match and set the locket ablaze. Eleanor let out a blood-curdling scream as her form began to dissolve into a swirl of black mist. The cemetery fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting for the first time. Lisa's return. The group turned to find Lisa standing near the mausoleum, her face pale but alive. She looked confused, as if awakening from a long nightmare. "What happened? How did I get here?" Tears of relief flowed as they embraced her, but their joy was short-lived. Behind Lisa, the shadows shifted unnaturally, and faint whispers began again. The cemetery wasn't done with them yet. As the group left the cemetery with Lisa, an uneasy feeling followed them. Though Eleanor Blackwood's ghost seemed to have been vanquished, the faint whispers and the unnatural chill in the air hinted that the nightmare was far from over. Lisa's return brought more questions than answers, and soon the line between the living and the dead blurred in ways they could never have imagined. The shadows follow. After the group reached safety, Lisa began acting strangely. Her once vibrant personality was muted, her eyes often drifting into blank stares. She would murmur in her sleep, uttering words in an unfamiliar language. Emily noticed dark bruises forming on Lisa's wrists and neck, as if invisible hands had been gripping her. One night, Emily awoke to find Lisa standing at the window, staring out into the darkness. "They're calling me back," Lisa whispered, her voice hollow. "I shouldn't have left." The group realized that Lisa wasn't entirely free of Blackwood Cemetery. Whatever had claimed her still held part of her soul. The psychic's warning. Desperate for help, the group visited a psychic named Madame Celeste, known for her expertise in dealing with dark forces. As soon as Lisa entered her parlor, Celeste gasped and recoiled. "She's marked," Celeste said grimly. "The cemetery won't let her go. It's not just Eleanor. It's the land itself. Something far older and more sinister controls it." Celeste explained that the cemetery was a convergence point, a place where the barrier between worlds was thin. Souls trapped there were used as fuel for an ancient entity known as the Watcher. Lisa's escape had disrupted the balance, and now the entity sought to reclaim her and anyone who dared interfere. The forbidden ritual. Celeste revealed a way to sever Lisa's connection to the cemetery, but it came with a heavy price. The group would need to return to Blackwood Cemetery and confront the Watcher. To perform the ritual, they needed 3 things. 1. An object that bound Lisa to the cemetery, the handkerchief with her initials. 2. The diary of Eleanor Blackwood, which contained the incantations used to summon the Watcher. 3. A sacrifice, something precious to them that could distract the entity long enough for the ritual to be completed. The return to Blackwood. The group returned to the cemetery, each step heavier than the last. The air was thick with tension, the whispers louder than before. Lisa hesitated at the gate, her body trembling. "It's waiting for me," she said, tears streaming down her face. Inside, they found the mausoleum once again. The diary was still missing, but the faint outline of a figure led them deeper into the cemetery. Following the shadowy form, they came to an unmarked grave that seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. The diary lay atop the grave, glowing faintly. As Jake reached for it, the ground beneath them began to shift. Dark, towering shadows emerged, forming a humanoid shape with glowing, hollow eyes, the manifestation of the Watcher. Emily began reciting the banishment incantation from the diary, her voice trembling but resolute. The Watcher roared, a sound that seemed to shake the very earth. Shadowy tendrils lashed out, striking at the group. Sam shielded Emily while Jake fought to keep Lisa from collapsing. The sacrifice was the final step. Jake, who had always been the most skeptical, pulled a photograph of his family from his wallet, a memory he cherished above all else, and cast it into the fire they had prepared. The flames roared, illuminating the cemetery with an otherworldly light. As Emily finished the incantation, the Watcher let out a deafening shriek, its form unraveling into streams of black mist. The shadows dissipated, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. Lisa collapsed, but woke moments later, her eyes clear and her voice steady. "It's over," she whispered, though her face carried a deep sadness. The cemetery was silent now, its gates sealed by the protective symbols the group had redrawn. They left Blackwood Cemetery for the last time, vowing never to return. Months later, the group had seemingly moved on, though the experience left its scars. One evening, Emily found an old, weathered photograph slipped under her door. It showed the four friends standing in front of the mausoleum, but Lisa's face was missing, replaced by a dark void. The whispers never truly stopped. Blackwood Cemetery still waited, its dark secrets buried but not forgotten. Would they ever truly escape its grasp, or had they merely postponed the inevitable? Let me know if you want to expand this into another part, or delve deeper into the Watcher's origins. Months had passed since the group's terrifying ordeal at Blackwood Cemetery, but the horrors of that night still lingered. Jake, Emily, Sam, and Lisa had gone their separate ways, each trying to rebuild their lives. Yet something dark still bound them together. The photo Emily found was just the beginning, a harbinger of the cemetery's unrelenting grip, the lingering curse. Emily started experiencing strange occurrences in her home. Objects moved on their own, shadows danced in her peripheral vision, and the whispers grew louder. One night, she woke to find muddy footprints leading from her door to her bed. On her nightstand was a single, wilted flower, one she remembered seeing on Eleanor Blackwood's grave. Sam wasn't faring much better. He began having vivid nightmares of being buried alive, hearing the sound of dirt piling on his coffin as the whispers taunted him. He awoke one morning to find his nails caked with dirt, though he hadn't left his house. Jake, the most skeptical of the group, dismissed their fears until he began noticing cracks in his mirror that seemed to form the words, "Come back." Lisa, meanwhile, suffered the worst. Though she was freed from the cemetery, she felt an invisible weight pressing on her chest every night. Her dreams were plagued by the Watcher, its hollow eyes burning into her soul. She realized that her return from the cemetery had come at a price. Part of her essence was still tethered to the cursed land. The warning. Desperate for answers, the group reunited at Emily's house. They pored over every detail of their experience, trying to piece together why the cemetery's curse hadn't lifted. It was Lisa who noticed something horrifying. In the photo Emily received, the void where her face should have been was growing larger. Madame Celeste's warnings came flooding back. The cemetery won't let her go. Realizing the curse wasn't broken, they decided to seek Celeste's guidance once more. The truth revealed. Madame Celeste welcomed them with a grave expression. "I warned you," she said, lighting candles around her parlor. "Blackwood Cemetery is more than a resting place. It's a binding ground. The Watcher feeds on the souls it claims, and those who disturb its balance are marked for eternity." She explained that while they had weakened the Watcher, they hadn't destroyed it. Its power was tied to the land itself, which had been cursed centuries ago by Eleanor Blackwood's bloodline. Eleanor wasn't just a vengeful spirit. She was the first of the Watcher's victims. To end the curse, they needed to perform one final ritual, a cleansing fire to destroy the cemetery entirely. But the ritual came with a dire warning. To banish the Watcher, someone must offer themselves as a willing vessel, allowing it to pass into the void with the fire. Celeste said, "There's no coming back from that." The final journey. Armed with this grim knowledge, the group prepared for their final journey to Blackwood Cemetery. They brought gasoline, protective charms, and the Book of Incantations. Lisa, however, grew distant, her resolve hardening. As they reached the cemetery gates, Lisa turned to them, her eyes filled with determination. "This is my fight," she said, The cemetery took me, and it's only right that I'm the one to end it." Though the others protested, Lisa stepped forward, her voice calm. "If we don't end this now, it'll keep haunting us forever. You all have your lives ahead of you. Let me do this." The cleansing fire. The group worked quickly, dousing the mausoleum and the surrounding graves with gasoline. As the flames began to rise, the shadows stirred violently. The Watcher emerged, its towering form darker and more menacing than ever. Lisa stood in the center of the flames, clutching the book of incantations. She began to chant, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. The Watcher's tendrils lashed out, but the protective charms held it back. Emily, Jake, and Sam watched helplessly as Lisa's body began to glow with an otherworldly light. The fire consumed the cemetery, and Lisa's voice rang out one final time. "It's over. Live your lives." With a deafening roar, the Watcher was pulled into the void, its form disintegrating. The flames died down, leaving nothing but ashes where the cemetery once stood. The aftermath. The survivors stood in stunned silence, their hearts heavy with grief. Lisa was gone, but her sacrifice had freed them. Blackwood Cemetery was no more, its dark history reduced to ashes. Boo. Years later, the land where Blackwood Cemetery once stood became a lush, green meadow. Locals claimed it was the most peaceful spot in town, though no one could explain why. Emily, Jake, and Sam often visited the meadow, leaving flowers for Lisa. Though their lives went on, they never forgot her bravery or the horrors they faced together. But sometimes, on quiet nights, they still heard faint whispers in the wind, a reminder that some scars never truly heal. The end. Let me know if you'd like to revisit this story with a spin-off or prequel.